Good evening. Welcome to the Policy Committee meeting for the School District of Waukesha, June 20th. Has the meeting been properly posted, Lynn?
Yes, we have been.
Thank you. Any citizens that want to address us tonight? No? Okay. We have, it looks like a huge list of things to deal with, but again, we'll be able to handle them, I think, efficiently. First, to get out of the way is the minutes from our, I'm got the wrong piece of paper here. Previous meeting, May, need to be approved. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes? Greg moves for approval of the minutes. Is it seconded?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Amanda. Any questions on them? It's a list of all that big list we went through last week, so, okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0. I should have announced that Barb is off tonight. She's excused. She has a personal thing to deal with, so. She may be watching, she said. So behave yourselves.
Hi, Barb.
Okay. We have, as a possible action item, we have another packet of policy adjustments that we've received through Neola. And Joel, these have been, essentially, this is a human resources list, isn't it?
Yeah, this is another list of human resources policy updates that
Right.
were being recommended for the district to consider due to legal changes, statutory requirements, or process adjustments that we've made in Waukesha.
And I believe these have all gone through our administrative group that would be responsible for this.
Correct.
And I think almost exclusively it's Chris's group.
We met with Chris Hedstrom and her staff to review these policies. So the policy in front of you is recommended through the HR department.
Okay, and let's see, Lynn, you gave me more than one packet of stuff. This is that's the stuff for the second reading. It's the stuff that starts with the physical exam, right?
Correct.
Okay. We will have to take these one at a time, I guess, but most of them won't be very.
We grouped them similar to how they were grouped the last time. Administration, professional staff, support staff, or professional staff, support staff, just depending on the group. So it's been grouped how we have done it in the last couple of meetings.
Good. And do you just want to start walking us through them?
Sure. The first three policies, 1460, 3160, and 4160, physical examination for administration, professional staff, and support staff. There was some language, the idea of collective bargaining was removed because that no longer applies. And then what the district had to do based off of a recommendation from Neola and then from our own council, we had to go through and identify who are safety sensitive staff. And so what you see in this policy as it relates to pre-employment drug screening, based off of some recent legal actions, we have to identify those individuals in the district who are safety sensitive. And so if you look at the fourth paragraph down, that the Board of Education has identified safety sensitive positions as those where a single mistake by an employee can create an immediate threat of serious harm to students and or fellow employees. Safety sensitive positions requiring post-offer pre-employment drug testing include our principals, our assistant principals, our teachers that include classroom teachers, counselors, librarians, psychologists, social workers, speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, effectiveness coaches and coordinators, educational assistants, substitute teachers, school secretaries, health room clerical, custodial and maintenance staff, paid coaches, and in the event that we had them, school bus drivers. So we worked with Alana Leffler and Gary Resch to make sure that this language covered us.
Okay.
And that is the only group of individuals where the board can require that we do a pre-employment drug screening. And that's where this language comes from.
Okay. So And the only other, you have bolded in here, unlawful and applicable, such examination. There's no evidence of an unlawful. Is that a change, or is that just an addition to the?
That is additional language.
Okay. And right up on the top, there was a kind of a clarification.
Yep.
Okay. So that covers 1460, 3160, and 4160, the same wording, right?
It does, and the other point to note is just that in the last paragraph, we are adding our non-discrimination statement. We're required to do it, so our non-discrimination statement is being added to this policy as well.
Oh, okay.
Board does not discriminate in the employment of administrative staff, and then professional staff, and then support staff.
So that's again, in all three of these
Correct.
policies. Okay, any questions on what Joe explained there?
Just a clarification
Yes,
question.
Amanda.
Joe, you followed up and said that that paragraph, it says the board can require these pre-employment screenings. So are these currently being screened or not?
Our practice has been that anybody who gets hired in Waukesha, regardless of position, has a pre-employment drug screening. What recent court decisions have said is that some employees, if they're not safety-sensitive employees, a Board of Education does not, or an employer does not have the right to require a pre-employment drug screening. When you look at the staff that is not included in this, it's staff that does not have daily contact with kids. So the staff that are included are those that have immediate contact with kids or would have contact with chemicals, machinery, such as our custodial maintenance staff, where that safety piece could come in. Staff that aren't included would be district level administrators who are not in a day-to-day contact.
So because this is here now, all of these, per the law, all of these roles
These
will
groups
need
will
to
be
have.
the ones that are tested as a pre-employment piece. Those people that would be excluded would be positions such as mine, the superintendent, where there is no safety-sensitive justification.
Is that a statement that we will not be testing them, or we have an option to test them, or what?
They're not required as a part of a pre-employment process.
Not required.
To be tested. These listed positions are the positions that would be required.
Okay, required.
Again, this policy language, it was recommended by Neola for us to take this to our own legal counsel to work with them on creating the definition of a safety-sensitive position, and that's why we're making this recommendation to you.
So it's already in practice, but the sentences here say that we can, per the law.
Yep.
Thank you.
You had to provide that definition
Right.
in order to do it.
Okay.
Any other questions on these first three, 14, 31, 60, and 4160? Okay. Which takes us to 3120 and 4120. Again, it's going to be similar wording for, well, actually, no, there's an option on one of these. But this is employment of professional staff. And Joe, how did it get into this one?
This again, just licensing based on Wisconsin law, and the need to take a look at job descriptions really within the scope of the district. So in the professional staff policy, which is really just capturing how we operate as a district, if you look at the fourth I'd say paragraph, the one where the board shall approve the employment and also fix the compensation and establish the terms of employment for each professional staff member employed by the district. In working with the Human Resources Department, the box that is checked is the superintendent shall provide a description of the work schedule hours per week, a determination of whether the employee is exempt or non-exempt for purposes of overtime. That statement then captures how we've operated in Waukesha.
It's the way we do operate.
It's the way we do operate. It's not a change in operations. On the second page of the actual policy, third page of the packet, you begin to see there was some changes for licensure. where they added technical and vocational education recently. So technical education, there's a definition of it, means technology education and any technology-related occupation. Vocational education now has a formal definition, which is added to policy, which means agriculture, childcare services, and so on. So that is now built in.
It's really just a matter of definition,
Yes.
be more explicit.
Yeah, and this captures the statutory language, which allows us to provide licenses through non-traditional means to
Okay.
staff.
Oh, okay. And on the next page, that just keeps repeating, the term vocation has been added throughout.
Correct.
And that covers professional staff. Oh, sorry, Joe, go ahead.
Just real quick, going back to page one, the item that we actually selected
Yep.
as to how we're following things, it makes an explicit statement that our handbook will include certain phraseology.
Yes.
Does it right now, or are we gonna have to upgrade or update the handbook?
As, at the last board meeting, Chris talked about the revisions to the handbook.
I just don't remember if these were part of them, I
It's
just
being,
can't
it is being
remember.
built in. It is, the exempt and non-exempt language is being built in
Okay.
the handbooks.
Okay?
Yep. And then,
And on the 4120, it's a slightly different,
correct, this would be where the, for our support staff, the district, and I'll just start with the third paragraph, the district will use an effective recruitment program to secure employees. It's the responsibility of the superintendent to determine the personnel needs to locate candidates for employment. An estimate of the cost of the recruitment and selection program will be made annually by the superintendent to the board for inclusion in the annual budget. So we do build the support staff cost into the budget. And then, again, this does capture the exempt and non-exempt status statement as was selected in the first box there.
okay, so that's a selection of the first box. Then we have some changes on the next page.
As a matter of terms, the Waukesha School District does not use the term paraprofessional. We call them educational assistants, that employee group, so that has changed throughout the policy.
Throughout. Okay, 4120, any questions? Again, these are not dramatic changes, I don't think. The 3124, the employee contract and superintendent to execute employment contracts for the board upon our approval. This is a very simply stated with three words are added to it.
Yep, by the board, so on the actual policy page, the second page in the packet, the superintendent is authorized to execute employment contracts for the Board of Education upon approval of employment by the board. Again, this is how we've operated.
Yep.
It's just a matter of making sure the policy is clear.
Terminology is there. 3140, termination, non-renewal, and resignation.
So, what we're capturing here, it's just to remain in compliant with Wisconsin law. The changes, clarify the requirements for non-renewal of any administrator's contract, which may apply to a broader category of positions that is referenced here, in, using the term contract. If you look into, I don't know really how to make it, simplify it anymore. They changed that to who in the second paragraph, that was recommended. But then also an administrator who is not employed pursuant to an employment contract governed by section 11824, may resign by filing a written resignation with the superintendent, and such resignation, once accepted by the superintendent, may not be rescinded. So if the administrator wants to resign, they can submit that to Todd, and once it's accepted by him or Chris Edstrom, it is a final resignation then. Go down to the final paragraph. The business manager, principal, and any assistant principals employed by the district, as well as any other administrator employed pursuant to a contract governed by 11824, may resign employment with the district in accordance with the terms of his or her contract. So
So the wording is to get us into the compliance with the Wisconsin statutes.
what the statutes say.
Okay, questions? 3161, unrequested leaves of absence, fitness for duty. This is,
This is a policy that has minimal change to it. If you look, the law allows, so in the fourth paragraph, it said where the healthcare provider designated by the board. The healthcare provider is designated by the superintendent or, de facto human resources, just in how the superintendent is able to delegate. So the board does not pick the healthcare provider. It's a function of the human resources department.
okay. 4430, leaves of absence, professional staff and support staff.
These leaves address things that are other than just the Family Medical Leave Act. Other language that the superintendent recommends the leave. So if you look into the policy in the second paragraph, all requests for unpaid leaves of absences by professional staff members for a period of 31 days through a full school year shall be presented to the Board of Education for consideration. And then the box that is checked, only if there is a recommendation for approval by the superintendent, and shall state the reason for the leave or the expected duration of the leave. This policy governs leaves in addition to that under policy 3430, the FMLA, or other district leave policies. This has been our practice, and now it is captured in policy.
So this is, yeah, practice.
This is for professional staff.
Just updating and the 4430 is support staff.
Support staff, the only change there is support staff. The approval goes to the superintendent
For approval.
It does not go to the board.
Okay.
This policy governs leave, so it falls consistent with our practice.
Again, it's other leaves, okay. Questions? 3431,
This is.
other, yeah.
This reflects a change in Wisconsin law. And if you go look on page 1, item D, volunteer, firefighter, emergency medical technician, first responder, or ambulance driver, and then it includes the language to allow them to take leave as their vocation would require.
And these can be rather immediate leaves.
Yep. Volunteer, firefighter, first responder, ambulance. I just want to get in there. May be late for or absent from work without pay if the lateness or absence is due to the staff member responding to an emergency that begins before the staff member is required to report to work, and if the staff member complies with all of the following. So we do need notice if the person is going to become a volunteer firefighter, 30 days after becoming.
If they take on that role.
Correct.
And then this could happen, a leave.
Right.
And then is E in addition also,
So in addition, organ donor leave, staff member may take up to 6 weeks of leave in a 12-month period as necessary if the employee is to undergo bone marrow or organ donation procedures to recover from the procedure. The employee may be required to provide written medical certification that he or she will serve as a donor. Leave taken for this purpose is unpaid. However, if an employee is eligible to substitute available accrued paid leave for all or some of the leave under this policy. So if you do have the sick leave built up, or in the case of an administrator who has vacation, they could substitute that in there.
again, this is to be in compliance with recent Wisconsin law.
Correct. And then under the support staff policy, it would be the same.
Same thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's 3431 and 4431. And now we are on to the Fair Labor Standards Act, clarifying overtime.
Yep, changes in this policy clarify the language regarding compensatory time off for overtime hours and also corrected language pertaining to the authorization to be able to work overtime hours. So if you go into the middle of the page, you'll see the box check non-exempt employees who perform compensable
Compensable.
work that are not authorized to that they are not authorized to perform will be compensated for any actual work time, but will be subject to further disciplinary action. This is a necessary step. You know, you should be working within the scope of your job description. Your overtime should be authorized, so those additional hours should be authorized. They shouldn't just be subject to the employee to work.
But if they do it, they get paid, but is subject to discipline, which could include non-paid time.
Yes, yes.
And, okay,
And then if you were to go down in the bottom paragraph, individuals who are employed in a bona fide executive, administrative, academic, and so we searched for the definition and we got clarification. Administrative academic means an administrator and middle management employee in Waukesha are considered exempt employees, so this helps provide a definition around exempt employees. Cannot be paid overtime for their work.
is this the underlined part, bolded, underlined? That's a new definition.
That is a new add in there. This is a definition that applies across all, industries. So this
Oh.
is a state and federal definition.
Administrative
So when
academic.
you see administrative academic, you're talking about something that does apply to a K-12 setting, whereas administrative may apply more broadly in other industry.
Okay. The academic takes care of that, yeah. And then on the back page, we have a big section deleted.
Yep. And it's just, those are some drafting notes that
Oh.
came associated with the policy. So job titles don't determine exempt status.
Okay. Any questions on 6,700? $86.05, use of electronic wireless communication devices by district employees while operating vehicles, board-owned or operated vehicles.
Yeah, this is, with cell phones now are mini computers, so, changes in the policy reflect the US DOT regulations that prohibit both texting while driving a commercial motor vehicle and while using a handheld, as well as using a handheld mobile device. So when you look into the policy language, on the first page of the policy, the addition states no driver may use a handheld mobile telephone anytime while operating a vehicle on a highway, including any time where the vehicle is in operation, even if temporarily stopped due to traffic or traffic control situations, except to communicate with law enforcement or other emergency services if necessary. And this is where the handheld piece versus the Bluetooth comes in.
So it does not include Bluetooth.
This does not talk about Bluetooth, it just talks about the hand to the
Right.
ear.
Now, this is district employees who operate board-owned or operated vehicles, so this is one of our vehicles.
One of our vehicles, so the vans and the trucks and the pickup trucks and anything that would be in our.
Joe?
Do we get the Bluetooth features in those vans to integrate right into the speaker system?
I don't believe that there are. I could follow up with Glenn in order to.
And, perhaps if we don't have them now, maybe that's something as we move forward. Those are a nice safety feature to have. They work pretty well.
They do. They work well. Waukesha is one of the more unique communities, given the red lights and the trains that do, impact our travels, and that's why when you think about your fleet and all those people that are driving, this town requires a high level of attention while driving.
You're very tactful, Joe. Okay. Everybody okay with that one? And, by golly, this is the last one in this set, isn't it? Public attendance at school events.
Changes in the policy include language regarding how to file a complaint if an individual believes that they have been discriminated against. So in the fourth paragraph on the policy, the first page of the policy, we do have to direct individuals to our non-discrimination practices if we have a policy that governs behavior or access. And so the statement says any person who believes he or she has been discriminated against due to a disability should refer the complaint procedures set forth in 2260-01 against our prohibition against discrimination based off of disability. And then in the further policy language, we note that it's on district policy or at a school event, or district property, I'm sorry. We do have our school locations, but we also have school events that occur off of our school locations. And if a student, a non-enrolled minor or adult is asked to leave or is removed from a school event, no admission fees will be refunded. We need to be explicit with that.
And that one is, quite simply, it adds non-enrolled minor.
Yes.
The adult was there before, apparently.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that's public attendance at school events if they feel they are discriminated against, and those were the changes. Any questions on 9160? Now, the procedure then on these would be, I will shortly ask for motion for approval on this. If it is so approved, we will be taking this to the July board meeting for the first reading. And the July board meeting, do we have a firm schedule on that now, Lynn? Wasn't that the one we were moving around?
Policy Committee?
Yeah.
July
Oh, I'm
12th.
sorry, the board meeting, we'll be going to the board meeting.
July 12th, yes.
Yeah, it was the committee meeting that we're changing, okay. All right, so we have reviewed from 1460 down to 9160 here. I didn't count them, 16 minus 1, 15 policies for bringing for the first reading at the July board meeting. Is there a motion to accept these?
So moved.
Moved by Joe Como, seconded by Amanda. Any questions about this part? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 4-0, Lynn. That this list will be going to the first reading at the July board meeting. Okay. The other item on our agenda is that we did have a first reading at last week's full board meeting on, oops, gotta get my list out here. Another 20 or so policies, which I think we have just the stack you gave us? Okay, we have, if you didn't bring it, we have another stack. Killed a couple of trees this week on this one. We have those, most of which were straightforward in what they were about. At least one that, I thought there was another one on here. Oh, that was on the other question that came up was on the one that we already approved on the committees. And that's done, so we don't have to deal with that one. But question was raised in the meeting on 3310 and 4310. And actually, I had a call today from Paul about that one as well. And we need just, I think, some clarification on what this is about. And first of all, one of the things we have to remember, this is a policy that is this set. Freedom of speech. We are changing in this policy, these two policies actually, the title of freedom of speech in non-instructional settings to employee expression in non-instructional settings. And the other one is freedom of speech in non-school settings to employee expression in non-school settings. The first thing we have, we are only changing the title of this policy. The other thing that comes in is this is dealing with the employees expressing themselves, and the separation of that employee from expressing himself or herself as a board member from expressing himself or herself as as a board member or an individual. Because all of us are playing as board members as well as have the right to operate as an individual. And that is the distinction. The other thing I think might be worth doing here, Joe, and I mean, I'm willing to do it, or you can do it if you want to be more fill in the blanks kind of a thing, is what not the restrictions, what the guidelines are for these employees in these settings so that they clearly separate the two. Would you want to take
Sure.
that on?
So the first thing, the idea of freedom of speech is a freedom that we all enjoy as Americans, protected in the Constitution. We can essentially say whatever we want to. There are some parameters around that, but we're given that right based off of the Constitution. When acting as an employee of an organization, so in my role as the deputy superintendent, I can't speak on behalf of the school district in all settings, in my life. I can't say that the district believes this without first going through Dr. Gray or communicating on behalf of the board in an instance. So I have to state that my opinion, and if you go through these guidelines, is clearly an expression of my own personal views and doesn't represent the views of the school district of Waukesha. And that those topics could range from anything from supporting a product to something that would be political in nature. We have to, as employees, speak on behalf of ourselves, not necessarily indicating that we're speaking on behalf of our organization. Refrain from expressions that would disrupt harmony among coworkers or interfere with the maintenance of discipline by school officials. Again, as a school staff member, I couldn't say something that would disrupt the ongoings at one of our high schools or one of our middle schools that would be against our district mission or how we operate. My actions, based off of my expression, can't get in the way with how we do business as an organization. Not make threats or abusive or personally defamatory comments about coworkers, administrators, or officials of the district. Again, when I'm speaking, I can't say things that would defame members of our district. Refrain from making public expressions which he or she knows to be false and are made without regard for truth or accuracy. Again, when I'm speaking, I need to be speaking factually if I'm speaking publicly. Should be doing it all the time, but really, if in the public setting, it's very, very important. Avoid talking about controversial issues or your concerns about them with students and colleagues during the school day. We do have a policy that talks about controversial topics in the classroom. This talks about where the expression meets up with that policy. There was some question at the last board meeting about where does this policy come from? And did we have anything in old policy that would support us having this? This policy was developed as part of our work group. It was discussed, or had the opportunity to be discussed at committee when we were reviewing policy. It went through the board approval process back in February, January, December, when all of these policies were brought forth. If you look in our old policy manual, there is policy 4119, which talked about staff-to-staff conduct and relationship. And in this, there were several bullet points that talked about taunting, ridicule, epithets, vulgar or derogatory language, spreading rumors, making threats, mimicry, name-calling, racial or ethnic or religious insults or slurs, deliberate, repeated, or unwanted verbal, physical, sexual contact, sexually explicit derogatory statements or discriminatory remarks, sexual comments, jokes, or displays of sexual offensive material, unwelcome. So a lot of this went into what was employee conduct. This policy on employee expression captures the expression pieces that would be done publicly or could be done publicly by our employees. The other policy where there's a bit of a link to this was methods of operation by the Board of Education and individual board members. So this spoke specifically to board members and how they operated. And the statement that is tied to this policy was on the bottom of the first page of the policy. This policy does not prohibit an individual board member from publicly stating his or her opinion regarding official board action. However, individual board members must refrain from making statements that could compromise the district's position. Individual board members should refrain from presenting opinions of other board members, and then it talks about personal liability. So there's a statement about how board members would have acted in the old bylaw, or the old, I think it was Operations 8300, and then also the staff-to-staff conduct. So that's where the history of this policy, where it used to exist for us, and now it's in an individual standalone policy.
Now, the removal of the terms freedom of speech and the adding of employee expression does in fact include things that may not be speech. Could be just your actions, or things you're carrying around with you, or
Correct.
flags you're waving, or buttons you're wearing, or things
Statements that you're putting out on the internet.
and this whole thing was written around the term expressions.
Correct.
And it is expressly for our employees. It's not for people that are coming to us with information or,
No, this doesn't talk, we talked about board and staff communication a while back. This doesn't get in the way of somebody calling a board member and saying, this is an issue or a concern that I have. This is something that goes to clearly making statements that are false, trying to represent the position of the district on something when they don't have the authority to do so, stating an opinion that is not expressed as an opinion. It gets into expression, not necessarily covered by speech, freedom of speech.
and the two policies are really just where it happens. One is in a non-instructional environment, but it could be in a meeting.
Correct.
The other is in a non-school setting, which could be in a more public environment.
Correct.
And again, one of us is talking at a football game or something like that, would have to expressly say, in my opinion, to separate yourself from the board's opinion.
Well, and that would be if it applied to a board member. This is truly for employees. So this would be if you and I were
this
speaking.
is this is
employees. So if you and I were speaking at a football game, and we were talking about, the next widget that we were considering, it would be a statement like, in my opinion, this. It's not the district is doing, it's
in your opinion.
personal
Yeah,
opinion.
and that's what I think we have to differentiate.
Or if I was in a public setting and, something political were to come up, I wouldn't be representing the position of the Waukesha School District in that setting. I'd be representing my opinion as a citizen. So it's that idea of freedom of expression. Because if I did express something inaccurately and I was representing the district, the Board of Education, the administration, Todd and Chris, would want to have a position where they could correct me for what I did.
Okay. Are we clear on this? Sure, we'll talk about, second reading on this will be coming forward in July's meeting as well. Right? Now, I don't know if there are other questions on any of the other 20 or so that are on here. I can't remember that at the meeting we had too much, because so many of them were strictly in compliance with laws. Even this one is really, if you look at the bottom of it, it has about 4 or 5 legal confirmations on it.
2016 case on there is the one where the recommendation came for making it, it's the difference between freedom of speech, which an individual citizen enjoys, and freedom of expression, which can have some parameters put on it by an organization that you work for.
One's at the bottom?
Yeah, Heffernan versus the city of Patterson.
Okay. And that's really where they got into this terminology.
And that really, with the whole purpose of bringing this forward to the board for was changing freedom of speech to freedom of, or
That based on these legal
based off of that 2016
settlings.
case.
Okay, thank you. It's also clears it up. Joe?
Just over the years, I haven't really witnessed abuse by our employees. I think there's not that everything is perfect and we're all harmonious all the time. We have our differences, but I think for the most part, people are respectful and they do understand that they're representing an organization. Have we had any major issues, or is this primarily just being driven by the recent cases?
I think it's being driven by the recent cases, but when you do get guidance like this, you try to plan for what could happen, not necessarily, our past, our past behavior is really a good indicator of what our future behavior would be. If we haven't had issues with this, you don't necessarily anticipate that you will. However, it's good to have something in place to make sure that if something does happen, you've got the policy in place to address it.
So how will we inform our employees of this change then?
All employees are going to be, once this is done, these are the types of policies that either, not necessarily this one, but the HR employee policies will all be referenced in handbooks, and staff will be oriented to the handbooks. Lynn and I met with Chris Hedstrom and some of her staff. We're going to be putting together a list of policies that our employees will sign off on at the beginning of the year, which has been part of our past practice. We had 15 policies that teachers would review and then sign a sheet that indicated that they them. So that is something that we're going to continue. We're updating that list right now. We'll be utilizing the Connect to direct staff towards these policies, and we'll be also messaging our families through student and activity handbooks as to what policy changes have been made.
I mean, it's a daunting task to keep people informed, really. We have a lot of changes in policy, and I think it's important to, I guess, highlight the ones that come into play the most often. I mean, there's no way, our employees are going to be walking around like having a complete understanding of these things, but having the highlights of these are the basics, these are the most important things, these are the expectations, I think is really good.
I think what helps with having a policy like this is it can be explicit. When you say we have a policy on expression, then people know where it is. They don't have to dig through another policy or guess, if I do this, then this could happen. The policy does help provide clarity to all who it applies to.
Okay, any questions on any of the ones that would be wanting to take back for second reading and approval at the July 12th? No, 12th meeting? That would be our action tonight to do that. Do we have to vote on that? No, we don't have anything that changed, so we are okay to bring it back. Just remind the board, second reading, we aren't changing anything. We're all okay with that? Outstanding. Gets us through our 30-some-odd policies tonight. Other business, we would ask if there is any recommendation for something that somebody wants to bring forward at a future committee meeting. Good. Anything other policy-wise that you want to bring up? No? Then we are standing adjourned. Thank you.